5e Ranger sucks, but it's okay, I fixed it, so why don't you stick around and tell me how bad a job I did. Okay, hang on, that was a little bit of a controversial statement here. I don't actually believe that the PHB Ranger is terribly designed or balanced. I'm trying to say some controversial things. Maybe people will stick around a little bit longer and see what I have to say. More so, it'd be more accurate to say I don't think it fits the fantasy that I think of when I would like to play a Ranger, and I look at it and I read it and go, man, this just looks so bad or so poorly put together and things like that. So let's talk about the 5e Ranger's design and my homebrew way to fix it. Hey everybody, it's Nick. Over the years of DMing 5e, I have had lots of players play lots of different classes with the exception of the Ranger. I have had one player play about 3 sessions of a PHB Ranger, and that's it. For the most part, people don't play Rangers, and I'm trying to figure out why is that? And then I look at the class and I read through it and I go, shoot, that's because this has such a weird fantasy and it doesn't play out really interestingly. I think there's a lot of problems with the 5e Ranger. I think that you can totally play the 5e Ranger and have a lot of fun and it work exactly how you want it to, and that's awesome. I'm not trying to crap on other people's games. If you are doing something that you are having fun with, go for it. But as somebody who is like, man, why aren't people playing this and why don't I have any interest in playing it? Maybe there was something I could do to try to fix it. So let's talk a little bit about what I think are some of the issues in the base Ranger. First off, favored enemy just feels really weak. It just feels bad to like, oh, I can track them really well and I can talk to them pretty good. I get a language. How often is that useful? It doesn't feel like you are this hunter type that is really excellent at knowing your specific enemy and being able to exploit their weaknesses and destroy them. And sort of my fantasy when I think of a Ranger is I think of Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. That is the prototype Ranger. It's what Ranger was originally designed around, actually. If you go back and listen to or talk to any of the OG designers, that is who they were basing that class off. So fighting with weapons, using natural abilities, knowing the wilderness and nature, using plants, and being able to interact with animals, having an understanding of the natural world and how to use it and how to assimilate into it, and sort of being this go-between of civilization and the wilderness. And that is what I think of when I think of nature, and then of a Ranger. And then I look at the class and I just go, man, you don't really do that. One of the big problems that I have with Ranger is spellcasting, and I know that's sort of controversial, but I don't think Rangers should have spells. Now, before you come at me and say, hey on Nick, from first edition, for the first time they were released, Rangers have always had spells. Yeah, sort of. But back then, when it was originally designed, those spells were really designed to be knacks or abilities. They were not like, I can conjure a magical wall of stone or shoot out this lightning arrow. They were things like pass without trace, or find traps, or snare, or different types of things like that, where you could reasonably imagine somebody doing this just based on their knowledge of nature and the wilderness. And so they weren't divine magical casters. They were people who had extra human knowledge and ability specifically in the area of nature. And the system that the game designers used to signify that were spells. So it makes sense to me that you have that system, but it doesn't make sense the types of things Rangers can do with their spells, at least in 5e. So I made a spell-less martial Ranger that actually still uses some spells, but more along the lines of those knacks or ability like they used to have in the older editions of the game, where Rangers could like just do things. They weren't spells, it wasn't magic, they were just doing natural things. There are also some abilities that are just straight up problematic for the player and for the DM. Think about like primeval awareness. You just like know that there are some creatures of that type within 1 to 6 miles. You don't know how many, you don't know where. How is that helpful? How is that productive? And so it's like, great, we're hunting this one specific dragon. Well, congratulations, there is a dragon or some more than just one dragon within a mile of you. Could be a bunch of wyverns, you don't know. You don't know even where they are to go look for them. It's really weird as a DM to be like, oh shoot, man, I don't know. Are there fiends within a mile of here? Probably. I don't know where they are or how many there are. Oh good, I don't have to, because you as a player just spent an action and a spell slot to learn a Boolean question. Is it yes or no? Are they here or are they not here? I don't know where they are or how many there are. It just feels like so awful in design. So here's what I did. I made my own Homebrew Ranger class to sort of fix some of those problems. Now, there are reworked classes with a revised Ranger, things like that. I think that introduces a whole new host of problems. And some of the solutions Revised Ranger has are really good, and some of them are really not so good. And so I decided, I looked at it and was like, man, it still has some of these problems that I don't want to deal with. It still has spells and all of that, so why don't I just make my own Ranger? I feel like that's a phase that a lot of 5e DMs go through, is they're like, man, the Ranger's busted, so I should make my own Ranger. And I'm going through that phase right now. And before we jump into this, I want to say that all I did was rework the base Ranger class. I looked at all the subclasses, and with the exception of Beastmaster, all the base classes actually seem pretty good in how they function. It's just how they pair up with the base Ranger that the subclass archetypes start to fall apart, in my opinion. Beastmaster is a whole other separate thing. A lot of people have different ideas about what it would or should be like to fight with an animal companion, and if a player ever wanted to have that sort of situation, then I would rework Beastmaster separately. But I figured, like, man, let's rework the Ranger class and see if I can't make it something that I would want to play. Maybe it's something you wouldn't want to play. That's okay. There are other Ranger homebrews, and there's a Ranger PHB, there's a Revised Ranger, there's all kinds of options. This is just mine. And I tried posting this on Reddit. Didn't really get much traction or feedback. I guess Revised Rangers are sort of played out at this point. And so I have a whole feedback community right here in You Lovely People. So I'm going to post my Homebrewed Ranger below, and you guys can give me feedback and revision and ideas and tell me what works, what's dumb, what's effective, what's an interesting idea but maybe over or under-tuned. I would love to hear some of your ideas. I'm just going to go through right now my Revised Ranger and what my sort of design philosophy was as I was going through it. So first things first, fundamental to the Ranger, spells. I got rid of them. That was one of my first things. I was like, I know I'm going to take out all of their spell casting with the exception of a couple of natural spell-like abilities that are definitely not spells. And I need to, since I'm taking out all of this power, I need to put it back into their class in other places. And one of the biggest ways I did that were in favored terrain and favored enemy. Those were the fundamental things that I buffed the most when making this new class. So favored enemy keeps a lot of the same things from the PHB. You get to pick a creature type or 2 humanoid subtypes, and these are your favorite enemies. You get advantage on tracking them, as well as all intelligence-related checks to know things about them. So you're really good at knowing anything about your enemy, as well as being able to track and find them. The other thing that I did was I added a combat ability to being able to fight your favorite enemy. I think this is critical. If there's something that you are really, really good at hunting and fighting and killing, shouldn't you be better at hunting and fighting and killing them and not just talking to them? So I cut some of the other stuff and I added in the ability to, when you hit one of your favored enemy creature types with a weapon attack, you get to add your wisdom modifier to damage. Simple, pretty clean cut. It's been done in many previous versions and iterations of the Ranger. You add your Wizmod to damage. It's not overbearing, but it is a solid boost to damage, specifically when you're fighting your favorite enemy. So, favored terrain, or natural explorer. I moved it back to favored terrain. That's what it's been called as long as I can remember, I think. And that's what everybody thinks of it as anyway, right? I have my favorite enemy, my favorite terrain, so just called it favored terrain. And you get to pick a terrain type like the PHB, and whenever you make an intelligence or wisdom check based on your terrain, you get expertise in it. So not advantage, but you get to double your proficiency if you are proficient in that skill. So like if you're proficient in nature and you're making a check about mountains and that's your favorite terrain, then that's how it works. So also I added in a couple of other things with this Natural Explorer ability. Difficult terrain does not slow your progress or your group's progress. You can't get lost in your favorite terrain, and you personally have advantage on stealth, perception, and survival checks while in your favored terrain. You're just good at being here. You know the lay of the land, or at least this type of land, and you understand fundamentally how to live and survive and operate within it, as well as helping those around you do the same. Next, I gave you a permanent passive bonus to your abilities just based on what terrain that you picked. So for example, if you chose the Arctic as your favored terrain, you are now resistant to cold damage. This is not just true in your favorite terrain, this is true everywhere. It's kind of a big boost, but also I think it should be interesting and dynamic what you choose, where you're from, where you want your favorite terrain to be. I think that should matter and be interesting and dynamic. And so there's a whole chart of based on what thing is your favorite terrain. These are the stats you get. These are not my ideas. I think this is straight from Mike Merle's Happy Fun Hour about how he would rework favored terrain. So don't crucify me, crucify Mike if you have any issues with some of these bonuses. Maybe they're not totally balanced with one another. That's fine. I'm open to hearing ideas about what could boost one or bring down another. I think that's reasonable. But the idea is that where you're from should shape who you are as a ranger in a slightly different way. That you have two rangers and one of them is, a swamp ranger and one of them is a mountain ranger, and they should function and feel a little bit different to some degree. And that is sort of what I was going here for. So then we have second level. Second level, you get a fighting style, just like the book. And then you have these knacks or abilities. And how I have it currently is there is a small list of spells that you are able to cast, and I make specific note in there, these are not spells for the sake of like counterspell or magic or anti-magic field or anything along those lines. These are not spells. They are abilities. They're things that you can do. And I think to reflect that, I made the casting time 10 minutes for all of them. So they're just natural abilities you have. But they're things like alarm or snare or pass without trace, things that you could imagine a ranger being able to do. So like, okay, I just set up a trap. I'm really good at being able to make a trap. I can just do it. I don't have to make checks or find stuff. I can just do it. But it takes me 10 minutes to do so. How I have sort of balanced that is you can cast or use each of these spells. I think I was careful not to use the word cast because they aren't really spells, they're knacks or abilities. You can use these abilities once each per short rest. Warlock is the only short rest caster, and I feel like if we're going to have something maybe a little bit caster adjacent using the spell system, but not actually spell casting, why not make it short rests as well? Have another short rest class. I think they're good. I think they should be used more. So you get one cast of each thing per short rest. Also think about how often are you really using alarm per short rest, or even pass without trace? Sometimes you're trying to cross large distances, sure, but that's about the only one I can really think of that you would be using all the time. Animal friendship, how often are you casting that, honestly? So that was sort of my idea with once per short rest, each of these spells. You'll notice from my list, Hunter's Mark is missing because I've moved Hunter's Mark to a class feature. I think you can use it something like a number of your wisdom modifier times per long rest, and basically other than that, it's Hunter's Mark. It's a bonus action, you put it on somebody, you deal extra damage. When you hit them, you can move your Hunter's Mark to a new person. Ta-da. I think Hunter's Mark is fundamental in the design of Ranger in terms of how it functions, sort of like Eldritch Blast is for Warlocks. All of the damage and balance and everything assumes that you have it and are using it, so I just gave it to you. Third level, you get your archetype as well as something that I have added called Primal Mastery, where basically if you interact with a beast, then you can force that beast to make a wisdom saving throw, or basically you control them. You're, I don't know about dominating, but you can issue them commands, they will regard you as friendly. They make that saving throw at advantage if you or any of your allies are in combat with it. So if you're fighting something, you can give it a shot, but it'll be less likely to work. But I have this idea of a ranger being able to come up to something in the wilderness and just like, hang on a second guys, and do that sort of Crocodile Dundee move. Is that an old movie? Do people get that reference anymore? Anyways, being able to do that and have this animal sort of understand you and be able to work with you, but it only lasts for 24 hours, and you can only have one beast that is subject to your commands at a time. So you're not going to have an army of beasts, but maybe you can convince that bear over there to hang out with you guys for a while. Originally, I had this as a higher level ability, but then I realized, man, when are you fighting beasts? You fight them at low levels. So if you don't get this until like 8th level, then how often are you going to really use it? So I put it at 3rd level. I know it's kind of early and it seems like a pretty big ability, but I like front-loading classes. That's where people spend their time playing when they actually play the game. So thinking about, wow, how cool is that 20th level ability? And this 20th level ability is cool. It's just sort of tough to put all the balance in the class around that because nobody spends any time there in the game. So yes, it is a little strong. One caveat I would say is this is not really a multi-classing kind of class. It's pretty strong in the first 3 levels. I get that, I recognize it, and basically if one of my players wanted to play this one in multi-class, I would just say no because it's a little too strong. It's like if they wanted to do a Hexblade multi-class and it wasn't really perfectly thematic for their character, I'd probably just say no. If you're trying to do like a Paladin Hexblade multiclass, just because it's busted, I would probably just say no, but that's not really what my table is about. So if you're playing with power gamers, man, this might not be a class for you. From there, the class is relatively straightforward until 9th level. You have ability score increases, you get extra attack at 5th level, you get an extra terrain and favored creature type at 6th level, you get a ranger archetype feature at 7th level, you get another ASI at 8th level, then we have 9th level. And what I did here is I added in the first aid ability. So I'm thinking of Aragorn being able to help Frodo out and put in the, what's it, King's Foil, it's a weed, to help Frodo out when he's been stabbed by the ring wraiths. The idea for this is that after you finish a short rest, you can heal one of your allies or yourself an extra 2d10 plus your ranger level. That's a big burst of healing for somebody who's been hammered. You can also end a condition on them, and I have like a list of conditions. It's not anything, but you can end one of those conditions on them. So if somebody got blinded and it's going to last for who knows how long, you can help them out because you know the lay of the land, what plants to use as poultices or medicine, things like that. So that's my design idea for the 9th level first aid ability. 10th level, hide in plain sight. I have kept it pretty much as it is from the book. I'm not wild about it, but I don't dislike it at all as a feature, and I think it makes sense thematically. It might be kind of weak sauce, but I think everything else in the class so far has been a little strong, and so I'm willing to leave it in there. If you have a better idea, I think it's pretty cool and makes sense, then absolutely throw it my way and we'll see if I can tweak it somehow. But I think the 10th level ability makes sense and is thematic. I don't love it, but I think it's fine. The next thing is 13th level improved wilderness snacks. I like this idea of older school editions had, something and then improved or greater and then superior or supreme or something like that. So I've included that as well just as a nod to previous editions, but there's improved wilderness snacks, and that's functions the exact same as the other knacks, except for it's different spells. You just get higher level spells. I think it's freedom of movement and locate creature that you get. Not outstanding spells, but pretty good. Also worth noting that these things won't really I don't think they should take up your concentration. I think that they should just function as they are. You should be able to help out your allies. You don't need to have an ongoing concentration on it like it's a spell, because it's not a spell. So maybe that boosts the power level of some of these things a little bit. Also at 13th level, we have Ambush Hunter. Now this compensates a little for the weaker spells. Ambush Hunter is during the first round of combat, you have an extra 10 feet of movement speed, and all of your weapon attacks have advantage. I know it sounds a little crazy, but advantage is actually something that I feel like happens all the time, and I don't know, like 70 to 80% of the time it feels like players have advantage. It's trivially easy to get. They should have it a lot of the time. I don't feel like it's that busted to just give it to them for free without doing anything. It does feel kind of strong, but it's one of those things that I think as a player feels really good to have advantage just 'cause, but doesn't actually make it that strong in terms of design. I think there's some design that feels really strong but is actually super weak, and some design that is really strong and feels super weak, and so I like having that fantasy more of a player feeling like they're really cool and strong without something being that busted. So that's my thought for Ambush Hunter. Vanish at 14th level, you can use Hide as a bonus action, and the only tweak I made to Vanish from the book is that you not leaving a trail works for anyone you're traveling with, so you can help your party also not leave a trail. I think that is sort of design as intended, but I don't think it's rules as written. I remember reading over it, and I think it said that just you don't leave a trail, and I wanted to make sure I specifically said you and all your allies. Like, congratulations, there's only 5 of them. Well, actually, there's a group of 6, but your ranger didn't leave a trail. Like, I think that's kind of dumb. So the whole group doesn't leave a trail, can't be tracked except by magic or unless you choose to leave a trail. Long video, I know, but we're almost to the end here. 17th level, your superior wilderness knacks. You get the 5th level, rangers need them, attack abilities, the Swift Quiver and Steel Wind Strike if you are melee or ranged. Basically, you get to use them each once per short rest. That's how all the other wilderness snacks work. And so you could feasibly have a ranger who functions well with both a bow and a blade and gets to use each one in combat. That seems reasonable to me if you're willing to be a generalist like that. I've definitely seen scenes in Lord of the Rings where Aragorn has a bow and then he busts out a sword. So that seems fine to me, but those things get added in at 17th level. Now remember how much time people are going to really be spending up here? Not a ton. So my idea is to make some of these abilities seem really awesome and busted and feel awesome if you ever get there, but they don't actually spend a lot of time there, so it's a little bit of, like, it doesn't really matter. Also, high-level class abilities are often super busted. So that's what we're going to look at as we're getting to 18th level. We have exploit weaknesses. Basically, if you have advantage on a creature and you hit, it's a crit. And you can choose to use it, doesn't use up automatically, and you can only do it once per short rest, maybe? Long rest? Not sure. Or maybe a wisdom mod number of times per long rest. I forget the balance thing I put on there. I just checked it. It's your wisdom mod number of times per long rest. So there's that. Level 20 Capstone ability, Master Slayer. This one's really simple. In the first round of combat, you get 2 turns. It's pretty crazy, I know, but I'm okay with it being crazy. It doesn't seem that busted. It's a little busted, but so are lots of other 20th level abilities, and I think that's neat to be 20th level and have super cool abilities. So the idea being that in the first round of combat, you roll initiative, or however you want to do initiative, and you get to take your second turn at any time that you want. You can just be like, I'm going to take my second turn now after your first turn. So you can't go first even if you rolled a really low initiative. You have to take it after your second turn. You can go back to back. Now remember how this works with the 13th level class ability. You get an extra 10 feet of movement speed on your turn, and you get 2 of them, and you have advantage on all weapon attacks. So yeah, rangers can kind of go Nova in that first turn of combat if they're 20th level. I think that that's really cool. That's really interesting. It flirts a little bit in the rogue's space, but I think traditionally and thematically the rogue and the ranger are kind of similar in a lot of ways, and so I'm okay with that. I was surprised because I haven't seen that in really many other places. I don't actively look around at homebrews, and I'm sure that other people have done that before, but you get 2 turns as the 20th level ability. Yeah, I get that it's busted, and maybe it's worth changing to something else, but it's one of those things that a player can like look at and go, holy cow, I really want to play this class because look at that 20th level ability. With me as the DM knowing, yeah, we're never going to get to 20th level. Alright, thank you for sticking around. Long video, I know, but I wanted to go through some of my thoughts and reasons behind how and why I designed things the way that I did. Feel free to jump down to the comments and let me know how stupid some of these ideas were, or how awesome some were, and how you're stealing things for your game. I don't expect people to start mass using this ranger, but I do plan on offering it to my players as an option if any of them want to use it. And I think it's a pretty cool martial ranger class and fits a lot of the design ideas that I personally have for rangers. And I get that that's idiosyncratic and specific, but maybe it's something that you also resonate with and really relate to. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.